Welcome back to Immortal Bharat. In this video, let us look at how the East India Company and the British government approached the creation of a strategy to finish off our education system once and for all. Before we begin this video, if you haven't watched the previous parts of this series, you can find them on the channel. In my observation, there were 5 main parts to this strategy. First, to delegitimize our education system by inducing fake ideas and propaganda, and by constant demonization of our culture and heritage. Second, to create an alternate form of education that guarantees safety, employment, and financial security. Third, to fill the British Raj loot machine with graduates from the education system they created so an army of brown British can continue the work of the white British. Fourth, to create, fund or support regional intellectual machinery that could spin a narrative to spread this strategy wherever possible in our country. Fifth, to create an Indian who is ready for conversion into the Christian faith and to serve the British Empire as a loyal subject. Let us look at this strategy in detail. To delegitimize our education system and demonize it, they needed to understand what our education, culture and heritage was. So they began studying our languages, our manuscripts, our heritage and more. The East India Company had already created a college in London to educate employees who were to be deployed to India. This included teaching Sanskrit and regional languages such as Bengali, Marathi, Hindi, Tamil and Telugu. In the study of Sanskrit, some well-known names are Alexander Hamilton, considered the first professor of Sanskrit in Europe, Monier Williams, another very well-known name who studied Sanskrit and other Bharatiya languages, and Max Muller, who is credited with creating the academic discipline of the study of India called Indology. A towering figure during this time was a person called William Jones, who went on to start the Asiatic Society of Bengal. The purpose of these scholars and the Asiatic Society was twofold. First was to understand our culture and heritage through our languages. Second was to utilize this understanding to create propaganda and narrative that would allow missionaries to convert our people into Christianity. How do we know this? Through their own writings and records. Here's a letter that Max Muller wrote to his wife on how his work in Sanskrit will uproot our culture and heritage. The Asiatic Society of Bengal also collected all ancient and contemporary manuscripts of all languages. At present, it has 47,000 manuscripts in 26 scripts. They deployed linguists and others to study these languages and translate these works into English and other European languages. They took all the knowledge and introduced them to people in Britain and then to Europe. They would create intellectual awareness in their own country to fund research in that area. Once they have gained enough knowledge to do it themselves, they then created narrative as if they invented the technology. The narrative also became extremely derogatory towards our country and our people. They incorporated this narrative into the education system that they introduced in our country.
So Sushruta, now this is a very interesting validation of Sushrut Samhita. So let's begin with 1794. The Gentleman's Magazine, that was the magazine started in UK. That was a new thing. A magazine was a somewhat new thing there, and an article appeared, and this guy's name was a Kawasji. And what the article said is that a nose surgery, now we know the word for it, rhinoplasty, like a plastic surgery, but the name wasn't there. A nose operation was performed on the streets of Pune, Maharashtra, streets of Pune, by a potter. Okay, by a potter. And what that person did is the nose was gone. This was a Tipu war between the Tipu and someone, and Tipu used to reward folks for cutting the nose and a certain arm. Bring the left arm and a nose and he will reward them. And the idea is to terrorize the other side. So that's how he was a bullock cart driver during that war, supply chain. And his nose was cut. And this operation was performed where it's a wax mold that was placed there, and I won't go through the details, but there was a certain flap that was done. What is interesting is this potter on the streets of Pune, he took a flap from here. Very important thing to remember is he did not cut it completely, so it is still connected. It's a living tissue, and he turned it around and put it on the top of a nose, then put all the balms and all the medicinal oils and herbs and all that, and in a few weeks, no infection, nothing, and now it's not exactly perfect nose, but he has a nose now. Okay, very functional nose in terms of the looks and appearance. That made a big deal of excitement in Europe. The reason is they were performing these operations. This problem of nose was, parts being removed was there everywhere, but they were not successful. Okay, so this made it like a big news there, and suddenly everyone started taking interest. In fact, look at the timing, 1794, and the Royal Institute or Association of Surgery in UK was founded in 1800. Now, I don't have evidence to prove that that it is because of this, but don't think it's a coincidence. And Carpio, he very methodically looked at this, and it was known as the Indian flap. Okay, the word was used was the Indian flap. He himself performed successful operations, and then a German medical man, he took this, translated into German language, and he coined that term rhinoplastic, the rhinoplasty that we see. Again, they were all accepting this. They're using the word Indian flap, like taking it down, and so on. They started, producing the drawings, exactly how to do it, and so on and so forth. They started writing books. Now, I don't want to go into Sanskrit and take time, but think of the word, chirurgery, like, cut. That's how the words are coming. Which afterwards became surgery. And so many papers are written, many books are written. So I'm talking 1794, 1806, 1816, 1818, 1845, and so on. Remember, they were not accepting. Some of the folks in Europe, although it's the Indian flap, they're saying Indians can do this. Okay, so the Sushruta name was a big deal, and suddenly there was a huge interest in knowing more about the medicinal science of India. Now I want to bring it back together. So someone in 1794 performed the surgery, and if you go to Sushruta Samhita, what is given here versus the report in Gentleman's Magazine is exactly the same. Now remember, 1794 to 1895, 100 years after this was established, Indian flap and so on, look what the British Medical Journal, how much bias they have and what they have to write. So when the Bower manuscript was translated and the Sushruta Samhita was coming out, they said to criticize the subject matter of this work in detail would be labor wasted. Its interest is rather antiquarian than scientific, because Indians cannot have anything scientific. It is the prerogative of the West. And then it goes on to say, but a collection of, says some good things, and then says, but a collection of complex farragos prescribed according to a fanciful and erroneous pathology is practically useless. So with the one hand they are taking it, using it, in the other hand they are calling the bad names. Okay, British Medical Journal.
Most of these people from Britain came to Bharat with the only purpose of Christianizing our people and of course looting our country. The thought that the only God was Jesus was drilled into their psychological framework at an early age. It is with this as the foundation they performed all their work in India. A personnel called William Hunter provided a detailed report called the Hunter Commission Report, where he elaborates the tampering of Sanskrit manuscripts so that they can be taught back to Indians. Here's an early example of them inserting the name of Jesus into the Bhavishya Purana. These scholars used the understanding of our culture and heritage to go on and create two of the greatest fake theories that has caused massive cracks in our country. First is the theory of the caste system in India, and second is the Aryan invasion theory. These British scholars would send their work to Britain, where it would be taught at the East India Company College. The staff would learn how to speak our languages, how to leverage various communities, how to deploy a social hierarchy, and how to pick the upper caste for education and East India Company related work. In this strategy, the British had succeeded in creating an army of scholars whose main purpose was to study our heritage so that they could help the missionaries convert us into Christianity. Destruction of our education began with the English Education Act of 1835, where the East India Company was to fund and support any institution that would teach the Western curriculum with English as the language of instruction. After the First War of Independence in 1857, the East India Company was liquidated. The rule of the company-controlled provinces went to the British Crown. During this time, laws against native education took on a draconian face. The law now said that any Gurukul that teaches in Sanskrit or regional languages is illegal, and running such a Gurukul is a punishable offense. This resulted in the closure of lakhs of Gurukuls across the country, with many acharyas and disciples even being imprisoned or killed for disobeying the law. 7,32,000 revenue villages were heavily taxed, due to which they were unable to fund their local Gurukulas and Patashalas. A new law to further shut down all other kinds of local education was created, so that said all school buildings must be Pakka buildings, which made it impossible for any form of native education to continue. During this time, the British gave massive grants to Christian missionaries to help them set up their schools here. The first convent school was established in Calcutta. They encouraged missionaries to set up schools by giving them land on lease for 99 years for throwaway prices as 1 rupee per annum. Even today in 2020, the Christian missionaries are the second largest landowners in India, only after the Indian Railways. Many of their lease licenses have expired many years ago, but we are yet to see any concrete action being taken by the government to recover these lands stolen from us. From 1840 to 1940, these draconian laws were applied with force. The British Raj also made it mandatory for Indian government servants to send their kids to convent schools. They formalized all types of education and jobs. They taxed businesses and people who work in local businesses much more than usual by introducing many acts like the excise tax, sales tax, toll tax, export duty, and income tax. Of course, many much more taxes like these exist. Due to such draconian laws and policies, people sent their kids to schools that follow the English medium education system so that they can later find employment to feed their families. After the British took over the East India Company provinces, the Imperial Service, headed by a Secretary of State, took over the administration of British-controlled provinces in India. In 1861, they opened up the ICS, or the Imperial Civil Service, also renamed to Indian Civil Service, for English medium educated Indians. Early Indian ICS candidates were sent to England to study the law and institutions of India, history of India, and languages of the province that they were to be assigned to. The contents of this curriculum would come from the British scholars who were posted in India and from the Asiatic Society of Bengal. The British also created the systems of police, municipality, and judiciary, where the ICS officers would be posted for governance, maintaining discipline and tax collection in India. This bureaucracy, judiciary, police, municipality became the governing arm of the British Raj in our country, controlled by the Viceroy of India. They successfully created an army of brown British to rule the Indian. Even today, after 7 decades of independence, these systems are still exactly the same, and nothing has been done after independence to dismantle them or to reform them. Today, the brown British working in these systems are more interested in collecting money, creating oppressive laws, and using power to harass people than to serve them. One of the best examples of how the British funded local machinery to spread cracks in our society is from Tamil Nadu. Today's Dravidian movement, which is based on fake facts, was successfully spread across the entire province by a person named E.V. Ramaswamy Nayakar, also known as Periyar. EVR was influenced by works and research of Robert Caldwell, a missionary for the London Missionary Society in Tamil Nadu. The British provided intellectual and financial support to Periyar to talk about Brahmanical dominance and how they have oppressed people because they were from an upper caste. This gave massive political mileage to EVR, through which he went on to found the Dravida Kazhagam, which later gave rise to the most poisonous political party in Tamil Nadu called the DMK. E.V. Ramaswamy Nayakar also advocated splitting the Madras province from India, which he called the Dravida Nadu. During the time of independence, when the British were leaving the country, EVR also wrote a letter to the British governor of Madras pleading them to stay. He vehemently supported Jinnah in his demands for a separate state Pakistan, and he was used as a useful idiot by Islamic fundamentalists and the British at that time. EVR was so obsessed with being anti-Brahmin and anti-Sanskrit that his obsession changed the Tamil script to remove Sanskrit sounds under the pretext of simplifying the Tamil letters for typesetting. The after effects of this strategy to destroy our education system is still seen in our country today. These fake narratives that the British created still drive policy both at the state and the central government level, one of the most important being education imposed in English medium by the government policy. Hope this video was informational. I wanted to keep this video as short as possible without missing on important examples. In the future, I will upload more videos that take up specific topics from each of these strategic areas that the British created. If you liked this video, please hit that like button and share it with your family and friends. To help me make more such videos, please donate to the Immortal Bharat channel. Thank you for watching. Jai Hind.